Why does the post and pray hiring approach come up short in today's AEC industry, and what should firm leaders be doing differently in order to attract top-tier talent?
So post and pray doesn't work because it's reactive. The best candidates aren't always job hunting or watching the job boards. You think about it, if they're pretty happy in their job and they're just head down working every day, they're probably not on the job boards. Plus, AEC is such a tight, close-knit market that a lot of people want to keep it confidential. You know, they don't want it getting out there.
What if the way you're hiring is actually turning away top talent? In the AEC industry, the old post and pray method, aka publishing a job post and hoping for applicants, it isn't just outdated, it's costing firms their competitive edge. Today's leaders need smarter strategies to attract, engage, and retain the right people. In this episode of the AEC Leadership Podcast, we're joined by Bryce Batts, certified career coach, business consultant, speaker, and co-founder of the Career Collective. We'll be talking about how AEC firms can stand out in a competitive talent market, where most hiring processes go wrong, and what it takes to build an inclusive, future-ready workforce. Whether you're leading a team or preparing for your next leadership role, this conversation is packed with actionable insights to help you lead better and hire stronger. I'm your host, Rebecca Swaby, and this is the AEC Leadership Podcast, previously the Engineering Career Coach Podcast. Let's dive right in.
Strong leadership drives strong projects. Become an AEC PM professional and give your team the leadership skills they need to thrive. Customize PM development, premium content, and a leadership edge that sets you apart. Learn more at aecpm.com.
Bryce, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? What led you into recruiting, and how did your path evolve into coaching and consulting for AEC professionals?
Sure. So I got my MBA with at a school in Florida. I was living down there after completing undergrad at NC State University, and met a friend in my MBA program who suggested I try recruiting. And she was working for a firm that did AEC Recruiting. And my soon-to-be husband at the time, still husband now of 20 years, he is a landscape architect. So she's like, it's perfect. It's same industry. You should really try it. So I did. And I fell in love with connecting the right people with the right opportunities. And I find that even more impactful in AEC because the labor market is so tight. And it's really fun to see the projects people are working on. Sometimes, it's something right in your backyard. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you helped place your husband at a new job. Is that right?
I did. We were living in Florida, and we had been down there for 5 years, and we had gotten married, and we decided maybe it was time to have kids. And so we wanted to move back to North Carolina. And I said, give me your resume and portfolio. I'm just going to start sending it out and see what we can find for you. And then we did find him a job. And I joked with his employer at the time. I'm like, look, there's no fee, but you got to give him a good salary and a good relocation package.
So technically he was one of your first clients, it sounds like.
He was.
And what were your first impressions of AEC? Like, I understand what you're saying related to how important it is and how big of a thing staffing and recruitment is. But any other first impressions of the industry that you remember?
I really liked working with those types of professionals. I had other friends who were doing recruiting, and maybe it was for admin or finance, but there was just something about AEC. And I like to have a lot of fun, but I can be a serious, straightforward person as well. And so I liked that talking with engineers. They were straight facts. They just wanted to know the job, everything about it, and just really get down to business. I was like, perfect. These are the kinds of people I can place and help clients the same way.
Awesome. And just one of the main questions framing this interview in general, how important is staffing and retention in the AEC industry at the moment? What are you seeing in terms of trends and some of the problems and opportunity areas?
Oh my gosh, it's so important. Coming from the recruiting world, I would say if your firm is needing help finding candidates, and it seems like most firms do, having that relationship with a recruiter that you can really trust and taking time to build the relationship from the beginning is really important. And I think you've got to get more creative than ever in attracting and retaining talent in AEC. As I mentioned, the labor market is really tight. And so it's a candidate driven market. They've got lots of opportunities. Oftentimes, they're off the market really quickly. So you have to move fast. And they've got multiple offers to choose from. So you want to make sure your firm stands out and that what the candidate is looking for and what you're looking for as a company are really aligned. Yeah. And I know you asked me about coaching too. During the pandemic is when I became a certified coach. My first client was an architect who wanted to build out a design build firm with her husband who was in construction. So that was really fun. And I think I took that next step because like many people during COVID, you have time, you get quiet and
Yeah.
decide what you really want. But I decided I wanted to help people build careers and cultures that align with their values and do something more than just recruiting. And that's kind of what took me into consulting recently as well.
Oh, interesting. So you're looking at things
Yeah.
a lot more holistically.
Yes. Yep.
Oh,
Because you
that's
can
so
have the best
fascinating.
recruiter or the best candidate, but if there's gaps in your hiring process or your onboarding process, that candidate may, fall off immediately or leave within a year, and then you're right back on that hamster wheel.
Yeah. And do you find that most companies look at it in that way?
I think they're starting to. I think because of a lot of trial and error and maybe a lot of heartache on their part, spending a lot of money to find these candidates and then to bring them on board only to have them leave, has them looking at the whole process and reevaluating it.
Okay. And you were talking about your friend starting a company, if I heard right, and thinking about these things basically right from the beginning. At what point do companies typically bring on a recruiter, either internal or external, when they're growing? Is it right from the beginning, or do you find there's a certain size where that starts to make more sense?
I find a lot of the larger firms have an internal team. But I have a person who was actually on my podcast recently. He's the director of talent at Freeze and Nichols, and they're over 500 people now, I believe. And he said now they have a recruiting team, but just about 5 or 6 years ago, they had no one. So I think as they hit that 200 person mark, they decided they needed to hire someone internally, and they still use external partners as well. As a recruiting firm, our bread and butter is small to mid-sized firms. So maybe they have one in-house recruiter, maybe a couple, but some have no one. So they're relying just on us. And I find oftentimes the principal or studio manager or someone will try to do the recruiting. And then when they find out it's too much and they can't keep the pipeline full and they need help, that's when they'll come to us and they'll say, we need 2 or 3 people like yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like even if you aren't at the stage where you can hire somebody to help you with the process, even just thinking about that in a holistic way, like what are the systems you're going to use? How are you going to approach it? What are your values? And bringing all of that forward is still important, even if you're just two partners that just started a business.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
because once you have a proposal and the project's getting ready to start, then it's too late to start looking for people.
When is the right time?
uh, they used to say always be closing ABC. It's like always be recruiting, always be filling the pipeline and looking for people and having those conversations. And I think for most firms, it needs to be something the whole firm is doing. It's not just HR's job. It's not just talent acquisition's job. It's everyone's job. So maybe you have an internal employee referral process. And so every employee is referring, people within the industry, and managers are always looking for good talent. So it's everybody in the firm has really bought into what it takes to recruit the right people for the company.
That makes a ton of sense. So, the term post and pray, I just came across this. What does the post and pray hiring approach, why does the post and pray hiring approach come up short in today's AEC industry? And what should firm leaders be doing differently in order to attract top tier talent?
Yeah, it's funny you say post and pray because on the recruiting side, we also have a spray and pray method that we say doesn't work. Which is about just, sending resumes everywhere. So post and pray doesn't work because it's reactive. The best candidates aren't always job hunting or watching the job boards. You think about it, if they're pretty happy in their job and they're just head down working every day, they're probably not on the job boards. Plus, AEC is such a tight, close-knit market, that a lot of people wanna
That is
keep it
very true.
confidential, they don't
Yeah,
want it
that's very
getting out
true.
there. But they say 80% of the best jobs are never posted, so that's another reason why it doesn't work. So I think you've really gotta be proactive in your sourcing and relationship building and then build that strong referral network, and that's where employer brand comes into.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that struck me when I was looking at job posts from some of the big firms, they're written in such a corporate way. Like they're written from the top down. And then when you end up talking to the people that are managing that department or that group, your impression of what they're looking for and what it means to be successful can be so different. Like, do you have any advice when it comes to actually creating the job postings? Is it, for those that do get posted, do you think we're doing a good job of really reflecting what it's going to be like to work in that group with those managers?
Short answer, no. And a lot of the firms we work with, they don't even have a job description when we talk to them. They'll give us the bullet points and then it's up to us to put the job description together. But again, like you're saying, then you're only seeing the highlights of the actual role itself. And I think when you market a position or a role at your firm, it's really like marketing the firm itself. You need to be telling a story. You need to be calling in the culture and telling people what that's like, letting them know what your mission and your vision is. It should not just be a list of technical requirements. And I really find that marketing and HR need to work together from the website to the job description to social media to make sure the story is clear and there's a through line in everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because oftentimes it's such a long list of skills, capabilities, tasks, but it
Yeah.
doesn't really reflect the essence of what it means to work at the company. And it's hard to get that sense from the job post. So
Yeah. And you read
that's
those
great advice.
requirements and you're like, Why would I want to work here? you know?
Yeah, exactly. From a leadership perspective, what are some of the most common hiring missteps that you see, especially, when it comes to slow decision making or communication with the candidates? What are you seeing as the top challenges?
Yeah, I was touching on this earlier, but AEC firms want to be really thorough, which I understand we're hiring architects and engineers, but speed really wins the talent game, and top candidates are off the market within 10 to 14 days.
Okay.
So if you see a candidate or say you receive a resume from a recruiter, you want to respond immediately because other firms do, and they'll start setting up interviews. And by week two, this person could have 2 to 3 offers. And I say it's a lot of times it's like dating because the timing has to be right. And then you have to make sure that, the two sides align, the candidate and the client both want the same things. But you think about a candidate who is on the job boards or was sent out to a couple of clients. They've got a few interviews. The first interested client is going to make an offer. And then if the others don't follow suit quickly, the expiration date's going to come up on the first offer. So they have to be, that's where the timing comes into play. So either the candidate has to ask for an extension on the offer from the first company, and sometimes they don't want to do that, or they feel forced to make a decision, or they'll turn it down because they're not ready to make a decision and they want to see the other things through. And that's where I think you really have to keep the candidate informed and have an open dialogue with the company as well.
Yeah. That's reminding me actually, one of the jobs I applied to at an engineering firm when I was 3 years or so into my career, I applied and then that same day I got a phone call from one of the partners. It was a new company. I got a phone call and he said, let's talk this afternoon. And by the end of that week, I was driving to the other city basically to meet them. So
Wow.
it just all happened so fast and it
Yeah.
was exciting and there was momentum. And ultimately, I
Right.
did make the switch. And so, to your point, when it comes
That's
to
awesome.
time, like it feels good for the applicant too, because your goal is to move forward quickly most of the time as well. So
Yeah, I think keep candidates informed from the very beginning. Let them know what the hiring timeline is up front. And then if there is a wrench in the plans, keep them updated and don't just ghost them after the interview or after the offer either.
Yeah.
We see that on the candidate side, but companies do that too, and it can really damage your employer reputation.
Yeah. I actually have a question for myself here because we're a
Yeah.
small software company outside of this role as podcast hosts, small software company, and we're often hiring software engineers. And when we post jobs, we can get 500 applications on the first day.
Oh my
What
word.
do you
And
do with that?
oh, that's tough. Yeah. I wonder if you should be asking more qualifying questions so you can weed them out on the front end. It's a delicate balance because when we post positions on LinkedIn, which is our number one place to find candidates, we don't want to ask so many questions because a lot of them are doing it on their mobile device. They can weed themselves out. But I would say if you're getting 500 applicants, then you need to be asking more
You need to be
questions.
more specific.
Yeah.
Is this a problem that you're seeing at AEC companies at all for certain types of roles where they're just getting flooded? Is there any role or, title that is just in excess right now and it's more the opposite problem sorting through it? Or are you finding that it's generally that it's difficult to find people who are qualified who apply?
Yeah, we find the opposite. If we do get flooded at all, it's with international students who are on a visa, which comes with its own set of problems because there's not a lot of companies who will sponsor a visa or do an H-1B transfer. So we do see that. Other times we'll see candidates who aren't even in engineering or architecture applying.
Okay.
But no, sometimes I wish we would get 500 applications.
Okay. So very different conditions.
Especially
That's
if they
good to
were a
know.
fit, that might be great.
Yeah. I asked a friend of mine who's a manager of a large group at an engineering company what I should ask you. And
Oh,
she said intermediate staff. What are they looking for? That's the hardest role for her to fill right now. Somebody that's, the 5 to 7, maybe
yep.
8 years of experience, project managers, somebody who can start to lead the technical and project work, or they have been leading it. What are they looking for? How can we find them? Do you have any advice for that?
That is the biggest challenge across the board. It says 5 to 8 year candidates. And those are the ones all of our clients want to hire. So first we'd help them think outside the box. If you need an 8 year PE, again, can you hire a 4 year EIT and train them? But really it's no longer just about salary. A lot of candidates want work-life alignment and flexibility. Most are looking for at least a hybrid role. And I think I saw a stat recently, it's 67% of companies are offering a hybrid, whether that's 1 or up to 3 days out of the office, but candidates want that. They also want opportunities for growth and leadership. I feel like I'm pretty impatient, but the younger generation, they want to know how long
They
they're
want
going to
it
work.
now or they want to know?
They want it now, but they
Okay.
also want to know how long am I going to need to work in this role before I can get promoted? And
Yeah.
what does that look like? So knowing those opportunities for growth and leadership exist, and then a clear sense of company culture and purpose as well. Um, I think Gen Z really wants to know that what the work they're doing matters, that they're making a difference. And so again, I think all that comes into your branding. Money always talks, but there's all these other things firms can do to stand out and to compete. And I've seen small firms compete with the large ones really well because large firms, you think higher salary, maybe they can offer a fully remote opportunity, but small firms can still compete on flexibility, on culture, personal growth opportunities. So you can still stand out regardless of the size.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like some of this is a branding exercise, but some of it might also be compromise as well too. You're talking about that
Yes,
hybrid piece becoming very important. Firms that have not taken that seriously, perhaps that's something that they can do in the short term to attract, to expand their candidate pool if they're struggling.
for sure. Because what we see is a lot of times if a candidate has two offers and one is hybrid and one's remote, 90% of the time they're going to choose remote. Same goes if one company is fully in office and the other company offers hybrid or flex hours, they're going for the company that offers the hybrid and flex time. because it is really important to them.
Does that information usually get back to the employer that they've passed on because, the other job is more flexible? Do they normally share that?
They do, especially if they're working with a recruiter, because we will let them know this is the reason this person passed. Sometimes it's projects, sometimes it's culture, again, salary, but flexibility is one of the big ones. Yeah.
Okay. So, in a market where top candidates often have many offers, how can AEC firm leaders better position their organization to stand out and win the talent they need? We've definitely touched on this, but I'd love it if you could just like slowly walk me through each of the parts that is that holistic pipeline of, all the way from recruitment to retention and so on.
Yeah. I think it starts with showcasing your culture and your people on your website and social media. Um, not every firm can hire a big fancy marketing agency that can share like great videos of their projects and behind the scenes and things, but now with cell phones, we can all take pictures on the job site or take pictures at company events and make sure that we're sharing those. We even do that as a company. And when we've hired, we have 20 people. So we don't have a, a marketing agency at our fingertips all the time. But candidates have said to us, I've seen your pictures on LinkedIn and they look genuine. It looks like people are genuinely having a good time, which is great because I think that's true. So showcasing the culture online and then being thoughtful with the interview experience. I was talking to someone in talent acquisition at a larger engineering firm, and they are walking their TA team through the candidate's experience, really putting themselves in the candidate's shoes. Like, how'd you first hear about the job? What platform did you view the job? Was it on your computer or on your phone? What were you looking for when you came across the job posting? Or how'd you research the company? So really sitting in the candidate's shoes, I think is helpful. Did they read a Glassdoor review? Because that's really tough. I've seen that happen to a lot of firms that have negative reviews online, and then someone immediately makes up their mind that that's not a place they even want to interview. So making sure you're tapped into what's going on online and maybe just Google your firm and see
Mm-hmm.
what you find yourself. Which can be scary. Um, and then I think, communicating what makes your leadership team inspiring and why it's a great place to build a career and really showing them how they can move up within the company. So it's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But yeah, think about your forward facing or your out facing persona to a candidate and then
Yeah.
what they go through to get the job. Kind
Yeah.
of going through a full candidate audit, I think is helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, once the employee starts, then the problem turns to retention, right? And there's always the risk that what is said isn't necessarily what is the reality. As you said, there could be Glassdoor reviews, that the people that actually work there, maybe they see it differently. You said the word genuine, for example.
Yeah.
Like, this to me seems like a much bigger problem than just recruitment for some companies, right? For some
Yeah.
companies, this could potentially mean pretty big changes in terms of really doing that work to explore, we've said these things. Are we delivering across these things?
Right.
Are you finding that companies are generally open to doing that work, or are there some out there that are maybe more comfortable with the revolving door? They like the way that they're doing it. Well, maybe they don't like it, but they're familiar with the way that they're doing
Right.
it. That's working for them for other reasons that maybe we're not seeing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you do have some of those firms who it can, and I don't know that they want it to be this way, but it can almost be a bait and switch. We'll offer you all these things. You can make your own schedule. We have a diverse work team here. And then you start and you find that that's not really true. I had someone start with a company and call us and say, they said they had women on staff and the only women they have are an admin person and the boss's wife. So no other female engineers. So I think representation matters for sure. But making sure, as you said, being genuine and then talking to your people all the time. not just at the end of the year with a company survey, but talking to them in one-on-ones. Maybe that's weekly, maybe that's bi-weekly or monthly, and asking them their thoughts. And then surveys are great, but figure out what you need to do to drill down to really get their true, honest feedback. Because sometimes I think if it is anonymous, obviously they're willing to say more, especially if they have harsh things to say and they don't think it's going to be well received. And then making changes once you read those things. And is it one person who maybe is not a culture fit, or two or three people, or is this a broader problem for the organization? And doing exit interviews when those people leave to find out why they're leaving, and where the disconnect was, what's not working. But I think if you're not willing to make the changes, it will be a revolving door, or you're going to have a really hard time even getting people in the door because, as I said earlier, it's such a close knit community. People talk and they'll tell their friends not to go there.
Right.
And that happens all the time. So not only are they
Yeah.
reading Glassdoor reviews, but they're also just talking as a community, and know where's a good place to work, and where's not.
Yeah. It would make a lot of sense to me that companies are doing a lot of soul searching right now because this is a top level business priority for them, right? If they can't
Right.
find great people, if they're not able to staff the backlog of work that they have, this is a business problem. And so
For sure.
considering how they can transform how they operate as a company makes a lot of sense. I want to talk about the employees for a minute and get your perspective on, do you think that there's a level of flexibility that we should be expecting, from ourselves too as job seekers? Do you ever find that, the employee comes in with all these demands and maybe on, the first week, everything isn't delivered as exactly they were promised, and they cast a harsh judgment and are out of there, for example? Like, can it be extreme on the other side too? What's the give and take?
Oh, I think that's such a good point. And you could go back to the dating analogy. In the beginning, it's going to be a little bit awkward. You're not comfortable with them yet. They're not comfortable with you. So give it a little bit of time, because we have had candidates call us and say, I've been here for a week now and it's not going well. I'm like, it's only a week.
Yeah.
So let's give it a month. Let's talk each Friday up until that 1 month time period and see how you're feeling then. I do think it takes a little bit of time, and maybe a leader's out, someone's on vacation, someone's sick or having a bad day. So I do feel like as candidates, you've got to give it some time once you start. But even before that, being willing to be flexible is important. Sometimes we'll have a candidate that says, I'm only looking for a remote, or I'm only looking for 3 days in the office. I'm like, well, I have this really great opportunity that's close to your house, and it's 1 day from home, but they have flex hours. Is that something you would consider? And sometimes it is. So us knowing all of those things as the recruiter or account manager is really important, because that's how we can sell our clients.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, you touched on inclusion a little bit. How do inclusive hiring strategies contribute to stronger leadership teams in AEC, and what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, obviously DEI is one of those buzzwords we've been hearing lately. And I think some people think of it for hiring alone, but it also helps with retention and lending to a good culture. I think when you have inclusive hiring, you have broader perspectives, and that leads to better project outcomes. It also leads to higher retention, because people stay when they feel seen and valued. And stronger leadership pipelines are important. And I think that those diverse leadership teams outperform less diverse ones. So in practice, broaden where and how you're sourcing candidates. Rethink the job descriptions. Are they inclusive or full of unintentional barriers? And then diversifying your interview panels as well. I mentioned that woman who wanted to work with more female engineers, but I see that a lot. Someone will, maybe it's a woman of color. She'll go on a website for an engineering firm, and all she sees are older white men. And it's not somewhere she wants to work. So representation matters, especially if you want to hire more diverse candidates, which I think is important.
Yeah, when I was younger in my career, one of my bosses, I noticed that a lot of the people that he hired were similar to him. Maybe there were 6 other guys that they had similar interests. They worked really well together. And I brought it up to him and I said, did you notice that you're often hiring people that are similar to you? And, part of it was just the market who was looking for jobs at the moment, who was graduating, who was in that. And, maybe part of it is something else too. But then when I started my own company, I fell into the same trap.
Mm,
Like I ultimately hired a few people that were really easy to get along with personality wise. They were kind of like me and so on. And so I totally agree that diversity makes things so much better and stronger, but practically sometimes it can be challenging. And I'm not
it can
talking
be.
necessarily about gender or cultural background. It can come down to personality too.
Yeah.
um there's in some cases like a level of work that goes into making that diversity work. Do you have any advice when it comes down to being successful when putting strategies in place, building a diverse team?
Yeah, something you said just reminded me of using the DISC assessment. That's something we use, and I think that can be really helpful, especially with personalities. If you're pulling from different places and you're, getting a diverse range of people interviewing, then well, where do they fall in? What's their personality? How are they going to be as a leader? So I think sometimes using some of those assessments can be really useful in figuring out where people fit exactly and how they'll manage and who would be right for their team. So I do like using assessments like that. I love the Enneagram, and there's an
Oh, yes.
Enneagram for work too, which I
Oh,
think is
is
really
there? I
cool.
am checking that out after this.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm obsessed with the Enneagram.
You'll definitely have to share that. I'm sure our listeners
Yeah.
would like to, some of them might be interested in checking that out as well too.
Yeah, I think Truity.com has an
Okay.
Enneagram for Work test, and I'm sure there's other ones out there. But to see kind of how your work personality, comes forward and how you tackle things based on that.
Okay, good. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation. I just have one last question for you. What final piece of advice can you offer to engineers who want to grow in their leadership roles and make a lasting impact in their organization?
Well, I would say as I get older, I can tell everyone has imposter syndrome at some level, and everyone is fearful of something. But I think leaning into that, being authentic, not being afraid to, not self promote, but you have to advocate for your value. And then I think showing up as a leader, even before you have the title of leader, is really important. And you can do that by mentoring other people, taking them under your wing, um, and just really, setting yourself apart by helping others. So invest in communication skills, build those cross-functional relationships, and as you grow, learn to manage people and not just projects. And then something that's really come to light in the last few years is seeking mentors, yes, but also being a sponsor or finding someone who will sponsor you, not just mentor you, meaning they'll take you under their wing and they'll take you to meetings. Because I think for a long time, men had people like this, and now women are saying, we need sponsors. We need people who are going to take us into those rooms and advocate for us. So, mentorship is great, but finding a sponsor will really help you level up.
Amazing. Bryce, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me.
Please remember you can find all of the show notes from today's episode at aecleadershippodcast.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points that we talked about in today's episode, as well as all other links to resources, books, or websites that we mentioned.